Back again in Bukuro.
We're back again in Bukuro. Yeah, I don't know. I figured we'd get some cultural stuff out of the way right at the beginning.
Cultural.
Joker 2, Folie à deux. Thoughts,
Cultural
Mr.
stuff.
Isis?
Yeah, I think
Did you hear anything about it?
Aaron said it was really good.
Oh, yeah?
Aaron was Aaron posted something. I think he said it was better than the first one, or
Interesting. I didn't hear anyone enjoying it.
yeah, well, he's a bit of a contrarian, so
is it just like...
I'd expect him to have a different take from...
Well, I heard it was like even like beyond like ironic enjoyment. I heard it was like literally just complete disdain for the audience and just...
Oh, really? Oh, well, that could be interesting. I mean, it could be fun.
Yeah, apparently the director like didn't like how the like original like the previous Joker was received, I guess.
He didn't like it?
Yeah, like, or he didn't like the like following around the Joker,
so
or like the sympathy with...
He was trying to like kind of puncture it. Or,
yeah, something like that.
Break it down, yeah.
Like and I think like the movie even ends with like the Joker dying or something.
Okay,
like they try to kill the whole series or something.
Yeah. I think it's just down to Joaquin Phoenix, right? I think it's more... Probably if it wasn't for his performance, I mean, I kind of doubt it would have been that much of a success, I guess.
The first or the second, or either?
The first. I mean, the first is the only one I've seen, so I can only really comment on it.
Yeah, I thought the first was good. I enjoyed it.
It was good. It was interesting.
Yeah.
I probably won't see this one. I mean, it's one of these things where I'm just like, I'm sure it probably is like well made and interesting, but
apparently it's just a hunk of shit, though. That's what I heard.
Yeah,
I know.
It could be, but it's
apparently the musical numbers suck. Like
musical numbers,
yeah, because it's with Lady Gaga, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought it was still that same other actress for some reason. It's with Lady Gaga. Okay, yeah. I'm not super motivated to. Not a huge fan of her. Of hers.
Of her work, of her discography.
Of her discography, so I might give that one a miss. Yeah.
Selected Lady Gaga works.
Yeah, selected ambient Lady Gaga works.
Volume 2
or whatever. Yeah.
The funny thing is there will be a day where that's like an actual release, right?
Thing.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. Okay, well, Joker 2 got that out of the way. Smile. Oh, did you have anything else on Joker 2?
Oh, no, I was just going to go off with this whole Lady Gaga thing where it's like, I just felt like her popularity was like a little bit blown out of proportion or something. I mean, it's hard to gauge it, but...
Well, she's just like a manufactured thing, kind of, isn't she?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's people that were taking her like weirdly seriously at some point, but I was just trying to like compare her to like Rihanna or someone, whereas who I think is like still getting played in clubs and like is still seems, I don't know, like more contemporary or something in kind of like music terms. Like, I don't know, are people really listening to Lady Gaga much at the moment, or like going back to her earlier albums? I mean, maybe they are, but it doesn't give those vibes, I guess. Doesn't seem as like, I guess seems a little bit more dated or something, at least from my perspective of maybe just being in clubs or like being
I kind of know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, where she's being played at all. Like, is it on the radio?
Yeah,
I just have no conception of.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
she's up to
it doesn't
now.
seem like it doesn't seem like her older tracks are like really around in the same way that like Rihanna.
Like Taylor Swift apparently is killing it. Absolutely.
I cannot think of any of her songs. Like
Taylor Swift or Lady Gaga.
Taylor Swift, yeah.
Well, we're not the demographic for it, right?
But she's been around for a pretty long time now, right? So you'd think
you can't name anything.
I can't think of anything that.
Come on, there's that one about the guy who she likes.
Is this what we were talking about? Where it's like, we thought "Call Me Maybe" was. Remember we were talking about this with.
Yeah, who were we talking
Manuel,
to? Yeah, that was Manuel. Yeah,
and someone, I think Nick was there too, and we were like,
Oh, and
like, we determined that
Mike, right?
Mike, yeah, we ended up walking away thinking Carly Rae Jepsen was like a bigger deal than Taylor Swift, which, in the sense of knowing at least one song, kind of seems to be the case. I don't know what that means, but
well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure I can think of a Taylor Swift song, but
I mean, like her career didn't start like last year. I mean, it's like more than.
But it's of the same era, basically,
more than,
right?
Well, yeah, but it's well over more than 10 years ago.
I mean, they all kind of popped in this sort of 2007, 8 kind of area, right?
It seems like more would have. I mean, I'm sure I probably would recognize at least one or two if I heard it, but nothing is like having this immediate recognition.
I mean, it's not really for us, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Taylor Swift, get that cashola.
Yeah.
Absolutely milking it for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So
I do kind of wonder if this is going to be something that like lasts, though, in the sense of music that just kind of like never really goes away, whether you want it to or not. You know, like even something like Guns N' Roses is not. I don't know how big of a deal it even is, but like it's just, there's a few songs where they're just like not ever gonna go away. Like Welcome to the Jungle is never gonna go away.
Yeah.
What's the other ones with them? Sweet Child. I don't know. Just a few of their songs. Like they have like maybe 2 or 3 songs that are just like not ever gonna vanish, right? Like people are gonna be putting them in movies,
American classics type thing. Like it's just part of the fabric of the culture.
It's just one of those things where like everyone, like people that weren't remotely even born when that album was out, like know who Guns N' Roses are. They know those songs.
Yeah.
Is that gonna happen to anyone other than, I mean, I don't know. Is that like, does everyone know at least one Taylor Swift song? I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone knows at least one Guns N' Roses song, whether they like it or not. I mean, in a lot of cases, I would say or not. But yeah, there's just some things that like I don't think are ever gonna drop out of being used in like movies or commercials or like some, I don't know, gym class playlists or something. I don't know what else they're being used for, but
I mean, I kind of in that vein, I guess, like Poker Face by Lady Gaga, I think will just kind of always,
but that's it does have,
maybe it's not quite as
dated, man. I mean, it's a pretty specific, I think, from the point of view of people that probably weren't even
Bad
born.
Romance. I don't know, like it's just
those are pretty deep dives at the moment, I would say.
Really?
I'm not really hearing them around that much.
Yeah, I guess now.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I wonder if it will.
I mean, I do remember when they were big, but I think even that's a bit in the.
They're certainly not in the culture now.
They're not.
But
really,
okay, Carly Rae Jepsen, like California Girls, right?
Yeah.
That's her, right?
Or Call Me Maybe.
Or is that Katy Perry? Damn it, I'm mixing.
Carly Rae's Call Me Maybe.
Yes, Carly Rae's Call Me Maybe.
Yeah.
Who's California Girls? That's Katy Perry, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Katy Perry is kind of slept on too, I think.
Is she? I mean, she's of the same caliber as everyone we just
so,
talked about, basically, right? Maybe not selling out arenas right now, but yeah, I mean, so California Girls should kind of, I don't know, it's so hard, right? Because I'm just colored by my own experience of culture at that time, primarily as being a testosterone fueled early adolescent.
So it wasn't really the target
well, kind
audience.
Of was, right?
Yeah.
Kind of was, right? Like school dances and all that jazz, right? Like it certainly was kind of stripes.
I mean, I was even like too young to like really get Guns N' Roses like when it was contemporary, I guess. I was just like, oh, this is like some weird band that like, I don't know, high school kids would, I was like in kindergarten or something. I was like, seems like some weird, something I didn't really get, but.
Wait, when were they? They were
like from the 80s, right? Yeah.
So like, what, post hair metal or what?
Oh, they sort of were. They sort of are hair metal, right?
Okay.
I mean, they're like not really. I guess they sort of got a pass, but they're not really like they're kind of in that same class as like, I don't know, Motley Crue or something, where it's like these like weird, LA kind of glam hair metal, junky bands where they're like going to strip clubs and wearing hair bands and like doing.
Are you right there? Do you want some water?
Yeah, sorry, my throat's still healing from the previous podcast when
it
was like totally.
We had some respiratory related issues as there. Much of the world is at this time, I suppose. But what were we talking about?
Stuff that I was actually like conscious and aware for was like Creed or something, right? It was I think a lot of people are more familiar with than they would like to let on. It just has this reputation as being like one of the worst bands of all time, which fair enough, but there's a lot of equally bad things which are taken way more seriously, like Pearl Jam, I guess. I always get into this with people. This is one of my like heretical opinions, which is that if you just like gave someone that was like from a totally neutral perspective, that had like never heard of any of them or the context around them, and if you just gave them albums by Nirvana and Pearl Jam and then like, Bush or like Creed or something, like a lot of the time they would probably think the Creed or Bush tracks were like better than the Pearl Jam and Nirvana tracks. Even though, obviously most people would not say that was the case, but I don't think there's too much difference a lot of the time with a lot of those bands between the imitators and the imitated, and sometimes think the bar was pretty low all around or in general.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a potential candidate for running that experiment because I literally know nothing about any of them other than a name and the song, maybe.
We could try to do that. I mean, I could just send like random tracks and not say who they're by, and then see which ones you react favorably to. It'd be an interesting experiment.
But
I feel like that's the kind of experiment that would like lead to like actual violence in the 90s. Like people, if you publicize you were doing that, and like, I mean, it would be almost impossible to do back then because they're so well known. But if you recorded that you like were doing that with like, I don't know, people had just gotten out from behind the Iron Curtain or like escaped from like a concentration camp or something. It's like, hey, tell me what you think of these tracks, and then they're like, oh, like I like these, Bush and Creed songs. I don't know about this Nirvana thing. It seems a bit, played out or something, right? Yeah, probably would.
It's a Coke and Pepsi blind taste test, but
probably would
hair metal edition, I guess.
Grunge, and I don't know, post grunge. I think they used to call it. Yeah. 90s was really big on these like categories, like alternative and post. There's a lot of like post music, like there's like post grunge and post rock. Like, do you know what post rock is?
No.
I'm not just making this up. Like this is a very serious term which is has been used extensively. Well, I mean, it's not like if you really think about it, like what would you like when you hear that term? Like, what would you imagine if something would be post rock?
Well, okay, like, so rock would probably be referring to what, like classic rock. So maybe like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin territory, and so post rock would be kind of the, I don't know, like after Led Zeppelin, I don't know, like in that vein, but kind of contemporary evolution of it or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's more in the sense that it's like almost. I guess it's more like it's probably closer to like human and post-human or something.
Okay.
Where like post-human kind of means not human in a
Right.
way. So post-rock basically doesn't rock.
Okay. It only rolls or what?
Is it? Well, sort of. I mean, it doesn't. So it's like basically considered bands that use instruments normally associated with rock bands. So they might have the same lineup of musicians as Led Zeppelin. So they'd have like, drums, a bassist, like an electric guitar.
Right. And the synth guy?
And yeah, like literally maybe a synth guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they would use it to make music that is like, 30 minutes of ambient kind of droning or like, stuff that just like, there's the dynamics is just like crescendos over like 20 minutes and then just like fades or stops or something, right? So it doesn't resemble, so there's usually no vocals. The song structures are either really simple or like really complicated. Like they just don't resemble, it's not like verse chorus or
right.
Almost like film background music, but created using like a rock band lineup, I guess.
Right.
So, like lots of guitar feedback or just like really simple figures repeated or things that are like crazily complex where it's
what's the archetypal post-rock song?
Trying to think of there's a lot from Canada actually.
Okay.
There's this one called Gaib or Godspeed You Black Emperor, which is I think from Toronto. Or there's another band called Mogwai that's really good.
These are all made up words.
Yeah. Yeah, so there is some of it is really compelling and really interesting, and some of it's really boring and really not interesting. So it's very like it's a very hit and miss genre where it's either amazingly out of this world or like
it just sounds like it wasn't differentiated enough, right? Like post rock should have gone into the post. There should be like a post rock and some other genre.
I'm sure someone's doing that, and I'm sure people are actually doing that. But yeah, it was big at the end of the 90s and like early 2000s, and I think it was basically finished by maybe late 2000s, like before well before the 2010s. Like no one was really doing it anymore or as much.
Yeah. I mean, so in that vein, I guess a lot of the music I liked in my early teens was categorized as like alternative.
Yeah.
And that was like
such a sketchy category. I mean, it's like what is that
everything,
even? Yeah,
right?
It's like everything. It's like everything, right? Yeah.
Panic at the Disco, Billy Talent, like My Chemical Romance, that all kind of fell into that genre of like alternative rock, right?
But that's such a I mean
3 Days Grace, right?
Yeah, when I was in junior high school, I mean it meant like, Alanis Morissette or like I mean like, kind of grunge bands as well. So I mean it's such a crazily broad category.
Yeah.
Literally don't know what that would even mean anymore.
Yeah.
Other than music from the 90s, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't really know what else it would.
Well, it's almost like a placeholder for like contemporary rock.
Contemporary rock, yeah.
If we were to look at it now, it might just have a completely different genre where it's like actually like labeled correctly, I guess. But yeah, at the time I remember it all being considered like alternative.
All considered the one thing.
Yeah.
They had these like festivals back in the day, like Lollapalooza and everything, where
it's still around, right?
Still around, okay, yeah. Where they would sort of try to do that. I mean, they would have like hip hop and like rock bands and folk, weird kind of folk stuff and everything. There's like a little bit of everything to the point where people could get a little bit of everything, and like the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something. It's kind of one of the worst bands of all time. There's so many funny quotes about them. Like there's just like other musicians like dropping crazy smack where they're like, every time I hear something that sounds horribly annoying on the radio, like if I don't know what it is, like when I pay attention, I find out it's the Red Hot Chili Peppers or something. I think there's someone, I can't remember who said that, but some other really famous musician said something like that.
What's their hits again? I mean, it's another one of these.
They have so many, man. I mean, like I don't even know what to. I can't even tell the difference between any of their hits. I mean, they sound pretty.
Can't Stop. Yeah, I mean, Californication. I don't know.
It just sounds like one. It's like a giant sausage where if you just cut it anywhere, it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's
like that's what
the vibe.
That's what their songs sound like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like some dude mentioning California, and then he's just like, like it's just all sounds like that. Like there's no, doesn't seem like there's any. I mean, it might be a little bit faster, a little bit slower,
right?
But there's not really much other.
Well, they know their product.
They know they know their product, right? Yeah.
Just keep rewriting the same song over and over again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, certainly an easy target, but I think it's an easy target for a reason.
I mean, yeah, I know I can't do it, so
yeah.
But yeah, kind of talking about pop, but shifting back to movies. Smile 2 was excellent, I thought.
Oh, is that horror one? Or?
Yeah, I think I like told you even on the podcast about Smile 1.
Oh, you mentioned that, yeah. It's like a possession thing or something, or
kind of, yeah. I mean, the thing is basically like what happens is the victim they experience someone like gruesomely killing themselves in front of them.
Yeah.
And like smiling like maniacally, creepily.
Oh yeah, I remember you mentioned. I think you mentioned this one. Yeah.
And then that's how like the parasite kind of interdimensional entity like transfers and moves on to its next kind of target.
Yeah.
And essentially like takes control of their reality and they start seeing like random creepy smiling stuff. Smiling people, not doing it justice at all. It was very well executed in the first one, and the second one is essentially following a pop star, kind of Lady Gaga type, I believe, who becomes the next kind of victim in a chain.
Sounds like so similar to this movie from, I think it was the late 90s or early 2000s, where it was a very similar idea. It was like some viral demon possession thing where it was just like passing around and.
Well, yeah, I mean, even there's the other contemporary one, It Follows.
I've heard of that too.
I can't remember how that one works, but essentially there's this like zombie thing that only the person can see, and it physically like walks towards them.
Okay.
So like you can drive away from it.
Yeah.
But then 48 hours later it like shows up, right?
Oh, okay.
And basically that tries to kill you.
Does it have like a steady rate of like, can you gauge like how long it's going to take?
Roughly, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of, they build the like storyline around that. People like knowing when it would show up and when it's time to move and so on.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember how it passes on to the next person, but there's I think you have to have sex with the person who has it.
So it's like a STD.
Yeah.
It's funny.
But it's like, a demonic kind of STD thing or something. Yeah. Yes, there's that. I'm curious what that original one that you're talking about though.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up. I think it's I'm trying to remember who was in it, but I think it's called like Fallen or something maybe, but it just sounds like a very similar premise to the one we were just talking about.
Do you want more water?
I'm good. I'm fine.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in digging that up actually. But yeah, Smile too. They like so effectively. It looks like they managed to launch a new horror franchise.
Oh, so you think they're gonna do a third one?
Yeah, I mean they'll definitely do a third one, but it's a question. Like I kind of worry that they might have made the stakes too high in this.
Well,
at the end of the second
that's
one.
usually how sequels go, man. I mean, they're thinking like, how can you up the marker and
maybe you can do it once, but the
yeah,
third
a lot of
one,
time
I think,
it starts getting a little bit ridiculous or like, it's one of those things where like just having just having seemingly higher stakes doesn't result in like a better movie, really. And sometimes it kind of like just jumps the shark and gets too ridiculous or something.
So that's a question for the third installment, because the second one is all very like believable and fine and not overblown yet, but like it ends in a position where it's like like how can you even execute that properly? But they certainly executed. Like I think the acting was good. Like I genuinely believed she was a pop star, right? Like, one of the horror scenes is essentially like a choreographed dance.
Okay.
With kind of like backup dancer types. Yeah. Which again I thought was very well blended and both like kind of artistic and creepy. So I thought that was very well done. So Smile 2, check it out. Check out Smile 1 if you haven't seen that before. I think these are very strong contemporary horror installments for people who like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that was the end of my movie section.
Movie section. Yeah.
The final important cultural note here is Liam Payne of One Direction.
Yeah. I do have a funny response to that.
Okay, let's hear it. I was hoping you would.
I was thinking about that where just watching just sometimes the random juxtapositions of things on YouTube and like.
And hold on, just to level set this. Yeah. So he jumped out of a third floor balcony in Buenos Aires. Former One Direction pop star. Yeah. Please continue.
Yeah, I was watching an interview on YouTube that someone did with him, and I think it was back in June.
Okay.
Which
again, of this year?
Yeah. Okay. So that's like what only really 4 months before he died, right?
Yeah.
And I think the thumbnail was like just him saying like, nothing makes me happy. Or he's looking quite depressed and like, it's a pretty long, it's almost like a 2-hour interview or something, but
who is it with?
I can't remember. I can send the link later and maybe we can include it or something. But so anyway, it's a pretty deep, psychological dive where he's just talking about, alcoholism and pressures of fame, pressures of, coming down from fame.
Right.
And he's obviously really reflective and thoughtful person, right? And towards the end he kind of does get a little bit dark and he's like, nothing's really making me happy, I'm not satisfied with things or blah blah blah, right? So you're like, oh yeah, I'm kind of feeling it, like this dude ended his life. And then like, so you watch that and then like, due to random algorithmic means, like the next thing that came up there was I checked out was like a death row interview with Richard Ramirez.
Okay.
Who's a serial killer, like a Satanist serial killer from the 80s known as the Night Stalker.
Okay.
And he looks kind of like Michael Jackson.
Okay.
He's just like a young dude that looks like he could be a actor or model.
Post skin bleaching Michael Jackson?
Well, no, just like, relatively natural.
Jackson 5?
Yeah, like
Michael
relatively
Jackson?
I mean, I guess he was, I don't know how old Ramirez was, but maybe, I don't know, like early mid-20s or something.
Okay.
So they're, he's on death row. They're gonna like kill him in like 2 days or something. And man, he's just having a great time. Like he looks like totally carefree.
Right.
He's just like laughing constantly and like, he's like trying to like make jokes with an interviewer, and he's just like getting carried away and like losing his train of thought, and like just having a blast, right?
It's not just manic unhingedness, or
it's hard. I mean, if it is, it's pretty. I don't know. I mean, well, he doesn't seem too manic. He just seems pretty chill, relaxed, and kind of happy, right?
Oh, interesting.
So you think, and you're like, well, wait, like I just watched a video of a dude that seemed completely miserable and committed suicide 4 months later, and he's like a household name musician with like millions of dollars,
right?
And then I just watched a dude that's like a a serial killer that's gonna get executed in like 48 hours,
right?
He's like totally fine and chill and happy. I'm like, this makes no sense, right? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if there's a lesson to be learned from this, but
death drive or what?
I don't know. I mean, maybe it might be a bit of a Zen lesson or something, but it's just a sense of like, I definitely got a sense of like, wait, like nothing really, like maybe nothing really is that important, right? Like Liam probably almost certainly did not have to take anything that seriously. And Richard Ramirez, I don't know. I mean, I'm not certain he should have been breaking into people's houses and sexually assaulting them and murdering them.
Probably
ill-advised, but
jury's still out.
Yeah, so
I guess not.
I don't know, but I just think it's definitely created a very strange cognitive dissonance in trying to get a handle on things.
Well, I guess one guy was pursuing his passion, and the other guy was
Liam Payne.
Yeah.
is one way of looking at it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Liam Payne, I guess, yeah. One Direction was like completely showbiz manufactured, right? Like it was one of these like completely inorganic bands.
But they still have to do it. I mean, it gets a little bit into the weeds where it's like, it's almost like with pro wrestling, where it's like you get these people that are like, oh, it's all fake. It's like, well, no. Like, are you going to go out and do it then? I mean, like, you're still going to break your joints and, get...
But I guess the question just was like, was he deriving any sort of creative fulfillment from it? Or was it purely just riding that fame roller coaster? When that ends and you're left with, nothing but, the demons in your head, right?
And millions of dollars. I mean, it's
yeah. But I mean, the fact that, so apparently his like net worth was 70 million, but who knows how accurate that stuff ever is. But still, I mean, if it's 10 million, then I mean, okay, he's in his 30s, right?
I think barely
he
in
was
his 30s. Barely, yeah.
And you, have at least $10 million, like, kind of balls in your court to enjoy your life. I mean, move to Thailand, worst case scenario, right?
I think that level of fame where there is a sense in which if you're not the one that's like maybe directly driving it or steering it, then you might have problems when it comes down or isn't what it used to be. Well, because who could really deal with that level of fame? I mean, it's so like unreal that it doesn't really. We were sort of talking about this earlier, like off. This is almost like a sequel to pre-podcast talk we were having, where I was just saying something like, a really weird thing is that like someone like Prince Andrew would even take Epstein seriously, I guess. Because like what, I mean, okay, like money maybe, but like what could anyone really offer like a noble that's equivalent to like being a noble?
Yeah. Like literally having Prince in your name,
being,
right?
Like being a prince, like what could anyone in any sense like ever and like anything related to sex, I mean, it just seems like the most completely worthless when stacked up against like a title. that you're like always going to have. It's a very strange perspective trick where I think maybe only someone that was like born in that situation could not see that, because like from the outside it just seems completely obvious in the sense of like, if you're noble, like why would you ever fuck with someone that wasn't?
Right.
And whether that's business or friendship or like whether that's
being a compromising,
like why would you ever
to them?
But why would you ever feel the need to even
like what could not be accessible?
What could not be accessible if you made the serious effort on your own? But I'm sure that's not how it. I'm sure just like that line of thought wouldn't have even. Like the weird thing is that line of thought wouldn't, I guess, occur to them.
But I mean, again, we probably don't really understand what it was like growing up as a royal. Like they're probably really like stuffy and concerned about a bunch of nonsense that
I mean,
had little bearing on the external world. Right?
So you're not getting that sense of reality.
No street smarts. All book smart.
Or something smart. I mean, protocol smart, maybe, or I don't know what.
Well, clearly not, I guess. Or what protocol are we talking?
Yeah, I guess just what. Yeah, I mean, what. So I think there's maybe similarities to that where if you're in a situation where you're not able to get any kind of perspective that would seem obvious, like if you're Liam Payne didn't need to ever do anything again in his life, which is like kind of the ultimate privilege you could ever. Like, you don't need to work, you don't need to like really do anything for the rest of your life. I mean, it's kind of like almost like the ultimate gift, and like he's even in a better position than like a noble in some ways, because no one's like expecting him to like, I don't know, represent France or something, right? Like he's not like no one is actually placing any, obligations on him.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to do anything, and he's also not,
Well, this just drives down into, I think, the fundamental issue of like it's really hard to create meaning for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's why most people prefer to be told what to do. Basically. Right.
Yeah.
So
like I can understand that it must be a hell of a drug to be like 1 minute I'm in one direction and it's like the biggest thing in the world, and then the next minute you're not. I mean, like that must be like almost like, crazy pure heroin, or like I don't know what that come down must be like, but
but I mean, it's not like it just suddenly ends, right? Like, I mean, there's got to be a bit of a tail to it, and you're still like a model good-looking guy, right? Like,
well, and you're still in that world. I mean, like you can still be on TV, you can go on TV shows, like you can release albums, like there's still things you can do.
So I know, like, I mean, neither of us can ultimately judge what his past was or what was going on in his head, but at the very least, like could have created more meaning for yourself, right? Could have, like,
I think I do kind of wonder if it's an age thing where it's like I think there might be like stepping on points or stepping off points where you can internalize or not internalize things. Like
internalize what specifically?
Well, just like things, being famous or like being
like
having like a up and down career, or like some being a celebrity, or even being a noble or something.
So what you're just trying to say that like if he became famous 5 years earlier, then he would be fine now or something,
or 5 years later,
yeah.
It might be something like that. Well, because you see these dudes, like, I mean, this is a classic thing with like a lot of the celebrities from like the 80s and stuff, like almost like the one-hit wonder dudes, like, the Limal and fucking, I don't know, Adamant, or like a lot of these guys where they're like,
but
they were like insanely, crazily Michael Jackson popular for like, I don't know, 2 years or something. And then like 8 years later, they're just like basically signing up for benefits or like,
right.
Right. So there's no like balance. There's no like real, I don't know, pacing or trajectory.
Right.
It's just like, you're just like up and down. And I think that's more maybe Liam's, as crazy as it sounds. I mean, it still seems ridiculous if you had like 70 million or something,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess maybe just the subjective experience of like, if you're still pretty young and you're just getting hit by that curve of like up and down.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I think if I like became famous in like, I don't know, 5 years from now at like 45 or something, like I honestly feel like in a lot of ways, I just would not even remotely like care, in the sense of like, everything would feel too late, I guess. So like, I wouldn't have a sense of like, wow, I'm getting crazily ego high on this. Like, this is awesome. Like, I better watch so I don't lose this. Like, I'd probably just say something stupid and get canceled because I wouldn't even care, I guess. Because it would just be like, it's too late. I mean, it's not something that would create that like ego anchoring, I guess.
Right.
That would like create the sense of like, this is the important thing. Like, I just don't think I would.
I see. Yeah.
And I'm sure if it like, but if I was like, if I'd gotten famous at like 25 or something, then
I kind of see what you're saying.
maybe that would have happened, right? But I think like, if you're like over a certain age too, it's just like, you just can't care. I mean, it's just, things don't seem real in that same way. And like,
well, you've like been through enough other cycles to realize that that's just a cycle as well.
Yeah.
So like, you wouldn't like,
you just see things that like, you just see that almost nothing has that level of meaning in the sense of like getting some crazy ego drug rush or something. I mean, like, yeah, you could maybe get that, but like, would it hit the same way as if you're like, I don't know, 18? Well, because that's crazy. I mean, like, imagine you get that rush when you're like a teenager, then yeah, you're probably gonna be fucked, right? It's like, it's like taking a 15-year-old and just shooting them up with like pure heroin and then take it away, and it's like, how do you feel, bro? Right? Like, they're gonna fucking withdraw like crazy, right? Because they're, everything's so sensitive and intense, right? Like, at that, like when you're like a teenager. But someone's like 40, 50, like, are they really gonna react that way? I mean, maybe, but seems less likely, I guess. Or maybe
yeah, so it's kind of a miracle that Justin Bieber or someone like that's still functional.
Yeah.
I mean, he's, gone through his fair share of rehabs as well, I suppose.
It's probably case by case too, where there is that sense of some people are probably just chill with whatever, but if people are a little bit more sensitive or unbalanced or something, then maybe they're gonna react differently.
Yeah.
But I always did feel bad for those like one hit wonders where like they had maybe like 2 or 3 crazy years and then they're just like signing up to like work at McDonald's or something. That's gotta be pretty rough, right? Because like people would recognize you and like like you were in a movie or something and then you're just like flipping burgers next to. There's a few people like that came over here. Like there's this professional wrestler from the 90s called Chyna.
Oh, yeah.
She's like a female
WWE, right?
Yeah, she's a female.
She had a sex tape as well, right?
Yeah. So she was and like she ended her days like here,
like in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she was just like teaching English.
Oh, that's crazy.
And probably making just like a really average salary. So
not doing anything on the side, not even like wrestling here, because wrestling's here.
I don't think so.
Well,
I think she was just retired and doing a
seeking anonymity, basically.
basic job, and I think it was part of some kind of downward spiral where I don't know if she overdosed or what, but I think there was some. If I remember right, there was some kind of downward spiral involved.
Was she looking for anonymity? Is that why she was here, or was it literally just?
I think it was just
washing up.
I think it was just an escape, or wash up somewhere where ideally no one knows you, but even though people still would. But just being somewhere, totally different than your normal, context, which presumably wasn't working out too well.
Yeah.
I always thought it was kind of unfortunate. I was like, really? Like, that's all it comes to? Like, you have this insane career, and probably every kid in the country knew who you were, and then you're just like rocking up at this burger flipping to your job.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks, but
no, yeah, I mean, it's hard to keep stuff on the rails, right? It's got to be insane to like be catapulted up into fame like that, and then just all of a sudden every door opens for you, and just access to all sorts of
there's
crazy stuff that will ultimately destroy you.
I think Momus, the musician Momus, and he's kind of a musician / writer, but I think he had something like this maybe a year or two ago where and he himself had been through various levels of fame, like in the 80s and kind of early 90s. He was like very like fame adjacent, so he was like on the same label as like Oasis and everything,
right?
And, he had some songs that were like on TV and kind of mainstream. And then he came here and he wrote songs for like mainstream J-pop artists. So he was always very like, I guess, like fame adjacent. So like the person in the street hadn't heard of him, but the people that the person in the street had heard of him, right? If that makes any sense. But so he wrote this I think it was an essay where he was saying like having seen both sides, like he did think that obscurity was better than fame.
Interesting.
Just because like you can, I guess, just because like you can actually do more when you're obscure in a way, and like there's sort of less limitations actually.
Interesting.
Like it would seem like fame would remove limitation, but it actually would kind of place more in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure, like, you can't go anywhere by yourself anymore, right? You can't date anyone who isn't famous, right? Because you're just living in a completely different stratosphere, and just like nothing would. Yeah. I guess on the I mean, it's purely superficial. It seems appealing, right? Like it seems appealing to like a toddler or something, right?
Like, well, it kind of is like a toddler level of I think there's some people that are probably like just like wired like a little bit differently, and they can probably like they're almost like their personality is like designed to
be famous,
just roll with that or something. But I don't know if most people would like really even get along with them that much. Like I think there's some people I'm trying to think of concrete examples, but like either they need that level of fame or they're just like their personality does well in that kind of environment,
in that context,
where they're just like always doing something, or like there's no downtime, or they're like
I mean, it is weirdly like, toddler-esque, right? It's like
the
hyperactive like kids that just never leaves
like
that, right?
Doesn't want to have any downtime, or like always wants 100%
of the attention,
like sleeping or waking or anything. Like there's just nothing that it would just like wake up and start talking all day and all night and doing things, and I don't know, signing things and wearing things, and like it was just constantly doing stuff. I mean, I'm sure that does work for a very specific kind of person, but I don't know how common those people are. I mean, I'm sure they're maybe more common than we would think, but having no downtime or having no off time or alone time, or I don't know, things like that seem very strange to me.
Well, I mean that, and like if you're famous, then everyone has expectations for who you should be or how you should act, and so that just puts a huge damper on anything, right?
Well, that's another thing where like if I'm ever in a situation where like someone is like, oh, like these people are like expecting this level of X from you, or they're expecting you to this, I'm like, well, I'm gonna do the exact opposite then. Like fuck those, like even if it's like my friends or I don't know, fans or something, like I'm still gonna be like, well, fuck them then. I'm gonna do the total opposite of whatever they're expecting. Like I'm not gonna do it because like why would I ever like how boring would that be?
Right.
I think so. I think there's that element too of like when you're like actually internalizing like what you're, I don't know, supposedly supposed to be doing, or like what you're what the audience like demands or something.
Right.
And like what like demand from the other side of your ass or whatever. I mean, like you're not gonna get anything that you expect or something, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of these weird situations where like it's almost like the fan base like hates the artist. And they're like enjoying hating them more than they ever like.
Well, yeah, I was like
enjoyed them, I guess. Like
I remember telling you this specifically about like I think it's a pretty common trajectory for a lot of podcasts, but like the Joe Rogan subreddit hates the Joe Rogan experience.
Well, that seems to be, like there's a lot of like musicians where that seems to be the case too.
Yeah.
Where it seems like the fan base is more about like hating the artist than even appreciating what they originally liked about it or something, or like, you know, they're just on board for like some weird train wreck or something. They're not really like actually enjoying it.
Yeah. But like I'm questioning, like you enjoy it, but then you comment like, oh, this is terrible, like the original stuff was better, right? Like you still enjoy it, but like you weirdly are like bound to hating it. Publicly, at least.
Yeah. Wait, it gets into situations where like I'm trying to think of concrete examples. I guess like the band like Smashing Pumpkins would be an example where like it's something like probably like 70% of the people that would actively be concerned with that band, like they're only like their first 2 albums.
Right.
And at this point they have something like, I don't know, 12 albums or something.
Right.
So that's like if you really think about it, that's like
most of the time was spent hating them, basically.
Yeah, well, it's like not even a sixth of their, like the stuff that you think was them is like maybe a sixth of what they've ever done.
Yeah.
And like especially the, you know, Billy Corgan, like I feel like most of the people that even, or at least a lot of them, have like hated him for like 8 times longer than they've liked him.
Right.
Which is very strange because you're like, well, like there was a time where you're like, oh, this is a cool musician and he's smart and a genius. And then like for the next 20 years, you're like, oh, this dude's a horrible idiot, moron, asshole. And so it does seem like a very weird flip. And I'm not sure I even understand the dynamics myself. But it does create the question where it's like, if they release a new album, it's like, can they ever, like, what can they even do? Because like presumably unless they like use AI to like copy something they did when they were like, you know, in their early 20s, like what could they even, like it seems kind of incapable for them to ever get approval from that part of the fan base. Because I mean, so there's literally like nothing they can do in a way.
Well, I know it's like,
other than retire maybe, or but
or set up another alias,
or set up another alias or something. But
but I mean, it's
and to be fair, like he did try to do that. Like he started another band called Zwan, I think,
and they followed him over.
Well, it just like, I mean, he tried to go solo. Like he released solo albums. He started a new band, and it was just, everyone was just like, when are you going to bring back the Pumpkins? When are you going to bring back like, this is all they, like all anyone could talk about is, all we care about is the Pumpkins. Like bring them back, blah, 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 right?
But,
and then when he did, they still weren't happy, right?
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental issue here is you have the trajectory of the artist that, it strikes a demographic at a certain point, and there's like a moment of overlap where everyone's on the same page, but then, just they separate, right? Like they go in different directions.
There's another, it's interesting synchronicity. There's another great example I just thought of that I was deep diving a bit this week is this, this comics creator, Frank Miller, who, you're familiar with stuff he's made, even if you don't know it.
Such as?
Like, Dark Knight Returns, which is like the idea of, Batman fighting Superman.
Okay.
Or like, just, I mean, it's just one of these like, classic graphic novels that like sort of defined a lot of the tropes and everything.
Right.
He's very in this like 80s trip of like, ninjas and, grim and gritty and kind of, Wolverine kind of stuff, right?
Okay.
There's a big Wolverine, contributor.
Okay.
So anyway, like he, in the 80s, like he could do no wrong, right? And then like, but like for the past, I don't know, 20, 25 years, like he's basically in the Smashing Pumpkins situation where like his original fan base doesn't like him. Everyone else hates him. And he's not getting any new fans. And so I was watching this podcast or, YouTube thing about it, and it was quite smart because it actually kind of made that argument where it said like, well, maybe what happened isn't that Frank Miller changed.
Right.
It's just that like from his positioning in the 80s, it seemed groundbreaking and important. But because the culture has shifted and other things have changed, like, most people have moved away from him. But even though he hasn't really,
right,
changed that much or like, gone, well, I mean, like in the sense that like what he's doing now isn't terribly maybe different from what he was doing back then. But it happened to hit differently at that time. Whereas now it just completely, flops or doesn't hit at all, right? So I think there is an element of truth to that, which is certainly probably, Smashing Pumpkins is kind of another thing like that where, which I guess is a really complicated way of just saying right time, right place.
Right.
Which no one really likes to hear.
Right.
Because it's like you can't really like control that. I mean, like I think creative people don't like that phrase.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like it's like, well then what, like you can't really.
Well, so there's like a few ways it can play out, right? Like you can have that moment, that cultural moment, and Smashing Pumpkins or this Miller character. Culture goes one way, fans want something else, but you're still doing the same thing, or you're on your own trajectory and you start doing something which again still just doesn't follow the culture, doesn't vibe with. Or I guess so that's kind of two, but actually one possibility. Or you have that cultural moment and then you, I don't know, continue to chase the culture basically, or try and stay one step ahead of it,
stay relevant. Stay relevant.
But that's almost like a even bigger pitfall. Right? Even more of a tightrope.
Yeah, it is even kind of scary in a way
because you need to like you're supposed to be leading the culture actually, but you're actually just trying to mirror back to it, right?
I think there's I think there's a handful of people that can successfully that's
like almost its own skill set, right? It's like being the ability to read a room on like a global scale. I think
there's a very few people that have been able to do that. Like I would say, like the classic example is David Bowie,
right?
Who just like always seemed to change at like exactly the right time,
right?
Like he would always, and a lot of people have pointed out that like his changes, at least for a lot of the time, sort of were pretty like reactive actually. But he always did it in a way where it didn't seem like that,
right? Like
it would always seem like he was the leader. Even though a lot of the time it was kind of just like following trends or, chasing trends or something in a way that but he had that ability to make it seem like he was the one, like he was always ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of the time he was just kind of, maybe trend hopping or bandwagon hopping a little bit.
Yeah.
But,
it's interesting though.
Yeah.
That's it's a good skill set to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you probably just have to be like born. Like, I don't know if that's like a skill you could even develop. I mean,
well, that or like great managers or a great team that's like
some team or something. Yeah. You'd have to have a real,
but then it's like just even more inauthentic, right? It's,
yeah.
I mean, so
I guess like
ultimately right time, right place again, right? But
the flip side is like people that are like ahead of their time to the point where it like almost kind of sucks for them.
Yeah.
And that would be someone like, I guess like H.P. Lovecraft, where like in his lifetime, like none of that stuff made money.
Right.
But like if he was alive today, like he could write something probably like 10 pages and like it would get made into a video game,
right?
Get made into a role-playing game, get made into a longer book, it would get made into a movie, it would get made into cards,
spin-off TV show.
It would get, I mean like even like he could write, like if someone found like a new short story from him now, like it could inspire, it could easily monetize into all those things.
Yeah.
To where but he died in extreme poverty of bowel cancer. He was like basically untreated from poverty. And so he didn't make like really a cent from any of that stuff.
Right.
Like Cthulhu made him no money.
Yeah.
He was eating like basic ass bologna sandwiches and his mom making him a glass of milk, and he died of cancer and poverty. Whereas, I mean, like look how much money that stuff is pulling in now.
Who's is it just public domain?
Yeah.
Like, oh, crazy.
So I can literally like write a Cthulhu story and publish it and make money. So there's nothing anyone can do.
Damn.
Much like, Sherlock Holmes or
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Yeah. Yeah, so that's and all of that stuff was ahead of its time for way long after, like at least like, I don't know what, 50, 60 years. Like no one was fucking with that, like Cthulhu, like how do you say that? What's that? Or like what's that about? Like, oh, these like stories are use weird big words and what's happening? Like we don't really understand it. So I mean it was just like way off the map for a pretty long time. And it started gradually seeping into movies and other writers and stuff, but like mainstream kind of stuff, I mean that took like what, 80 years or something. It's crazy. Like what
is there the opposite situation? Can you be too late in the culture? Can you execute something like authentically and amazingly, but you should have done it like 50 years ago or something?
Well, I mean I think that's the case for people that are like high level jazz musicians or something now, where like they might be better than like the legends actually. Like they might actually be better players than, I don't know, whoever would be considered a,
I guess it's just completely different context, right? If you're doing it after the fact, right? Like it's not even in the same realm.
It's hard to like hit, right? I mean, it doesn't seem like well, I mean, like even rock music now. I mean, like what if someone started like a incredible grunge band now? Like, what would that? Who's gonna listen to? Right?
Yeah. I mean, it would just be like a weird like
revival cosplay or something. Yeah, it seemed like some weird cosplay or something.
It's like okay, but like that was then.
Yeah. Even though in theory, there's nothing. In theory, like, or someone like writing, one of the best operas of all time. Like there's nothing to stop people from creating like high level opera now.
Yeah.
But like how many people are doing it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
select few, I imagine, right?
But like the people are writing new operas.
Right.
But is it ever going to get, considered the same way as like Wagner or something? Like probably not.
Is opera just background music for presidential assassinations?
Opera, it's supposed to be intense, man. I mean, like the weird thing is that like opera was like the equivalent of like the music video of the time, because it's supposed to be like everything at the same time, right?
Like a soapy love story with.
Well, I mean, it's supposed to be drama, poetry,
right,
singing, orchestra, costumes, stage act. Like it's literally supposed to be every art at the same time. Like that's what it's like in German. Literally the Gesamtkunstwerk, or the total artwork, right?
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So it's supposed to be like holographic MTV with I don't know, whatever. Like just, but that's like the idea at the time, right? Of going to the opera, you're gonna get every art at the same time.
Stimulating,
most stimulating thing you can even. Well, because think about it, right? You got
modern operas are ruining culture,
ruining attention spans. They're ruining attention spans. That's what they're ruining. Your senses are getting blitzed out by those operas, so you can't focus.
Dopamine levels.
Dopamine levels are getting dangerously depleted by opera.
Your dopamine stacking.
Dopamine stacking by.
Have you heard of this?
Watching those. No. Yeah. So it's weird that like it doesn't seem that way to us, but like if you think about it, like it's pretty. Like, how would you even create? Like, you gotta come with a story. You gotta write dialogue that can be sung.
Right.
Then you gotta write the music. You gotta have costume designers, lighting. Like, so you're basically making like a movie. Without the camera.
Right.
I guess, which is even kind of crazier. Because you can't like edit it. You can't like slow down or stop or fine tune it. It just has to happen in real time. For like 3 hours or something.
Yeah.
Everything has to go perfectly in real time. Right. So I mean, like, it is kind of crazy, but like, how many people care? I mean, like,
yeah, it'd be interesting to go now. Wonder if it was
to an opera. Yeah. You could buy tickets and
kind of curious now.
Go see. Well, I mean, like, if you went and saw like Wagner, like The Rings or something, like that probably would be pretty crazy. Because like it's going to be really loud, and like they do have to figure out how to choreograph all of that, and yeah, it's long. Like it's like 3-4 days or something.
Wait, what?
The Ring cycle.
Wait, what?
You have to like go like it's like part 1, part 2. And
okay,
like,
so you have to go like 4 nights in a row.
Yeah. And they're all like long, right? Well, I mean, it's just one. This is just one. This is just one example. There's much more accessible ones you can.
I mean, I could, I could put down TikTok for one night, but 2 nights in a row, that's tricky.
Yeah. I mean, people do go see these things. I think there is an opera house in Tokyo somewhere.
I believe so. Yeah, there's got to be, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Like if you've literally never been to an opera,
have you?
Yeah.
Oh, you've gone. Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I need to.
Yeah. Like you probably like you will want to do research, because like it's probably going to be in Italian or French, and like the story's possibly not going to be immediately making sense, or like what, like, so you're gonna be like, what's this about,
right.
What's the context here, like what is supposed to be happening. But yeah, I mean, like it is intense. I mean, like there's a lot of human effort that has to like go into that, like to actually perform these things and create them.
Is it like a 3-hour ordeal per night as well?
No. Well, it's like watching it's like a singing play, right? So you're like sort of getting a sense of what's happening, because like they are basically acting it out in some ways. But it's wild, man. Like if you I'll just say, like, so as not to get demonetified or monetized, I'll just say that if if you went with a bit of pharmaceutical enhancement,
okay,
like it would probably be crazy. Like because because you imagine the music would be hitting,
right,
and like the emotions from the drama, and like there's just, I mean, the orchestra, like it would probably take on a whole other level of impact, right? So
interesting.
Yeah, don't discount opera.
I'm picturing my head turning into a champagne or a wine glass and exploding.
Exploding, yeah.
Well, interesting. Okay, I'll put that on the bucket list at the very least.
Yeah. How are we doing for?
We're at 110 here.
I think we're about ready to wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
go to the opera.
Go to the opera. DBLV on Instagram. Just the nicest one
on Twitter X.
And just the nicest
X Twitter. Yeah.
93
on Instagram.
Yeah.
Go to the opera.
Yeah. Thanks, folks.
Peace out.
Have a good week.
Peace.